Hey everybody, this is episode 19 of Eat, Drink, Write, an Urban Fantasy Whiteboard. I am Sherry Ellison.
And I'm Taylor Ellison. I'm here.
Today we're going to be talking about character background and how to build a character background.
Yeah.
But first things first, what are you eating?
I have chocolate chip cookies because in quarantine I decided I needed some sweets, and most of the time I don't let myself buy any. So I refrained from buying Oreo cookies because I will eat the entire container of those in one sitting, and instead got chocolate chip cookies, which is second best, but I won't eat the entire thing in like one night. So
Okay, and what are you drinking?
I have a lemon White Claw here. So
She's on a White Claw kick.
Oh yeah. What about you?
I am eating salmon crackers with cream cheese on top. I've got 3 different flavors of salmon. They're all smoked on keto crackers and cream cheese on top. So pretty fancy schmancy today.
It's better than chocolate chip cookies.
And pink champagne. It's actually a pink sparkling wine. It's a brand I've never had, which I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but that's what I'm drinking.
Okay.
How was your week?
It was pretty good. I feel like I say this every time these days, but the days blur together and kind of, the mesh, and it's a day, not like a Monday or a Friday or a Tuesday. It's just a day. But I did write 2,000 words this week. So, well,
Really?
I wrote like 3,000, and then I decided I didn't like that first 1,000, so I replaced it with a different 2,000.
Very nice. On my hair. It's been a big bad hair day this entire time being in quarantine. I miss my hairdresser desperately, but it is what it is. What about work? How was work today? Work this week?
It's been okay. It's both slowed down and kind of sped up. I had to go in the lab twice this week just for various things. Monday I had to order some stuff, and then yesterday I had to let guys into the building because it's locked and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it's about the same.
You've got the power.
I do.
Only one that can let people in and out.
I do, yeah. I am quote unquote essential, but only for about 30 minutes to an hour a week. So
Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
Been busy week-wise for me, work-wise. It just doesn't really stop. The Supreme Court of Georgia did extend the judicial emergency to June 12th, which we had already, my chief judge here locally in Gwinnett had said he didn't think it was safe for the number of people that I've got. We've got 11 divisions of judges, and to have that many calendars crammed into a 2.5-day period is just not safe right now.
Yeah.
And so he said, even before the Supreme Court justice said, he said, we're not having child support in May. And then we didn't have any June set already. So our next court will be July.
Wow. That's insane.
It is. It's very strange, but I do have some judges wanting to do Zoom hearings, which is going to be interesting. I haven't done it yet. Next Friday is our first Zoom calendar.
That's exciting.
And then I think for consent orders, because I'm trying to work with defendants through Zoom and through the mail and telephone calls, and we might do some Zoom meetings with the judges to do consent orders, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a whole new world for us.
Yeah.
I didn't get my sewing machine this week. It was supposed to come in Monday. It's still not here. I can ask for a refund tomorrow if it doesn't come in today. I'm very sad. It was going to be my Mother's Day present. So
well, I definitely sent you Mother's Day present, so you still get at least something.
Yes, it came in, and the one from Courtney came in, so they're both down by the front door.
Oh, good.
And Jordan says she's going to bring me mine on Sunday. She's on the way right now to drop off our grand dog, Ariel. So she's going to throw Ariel in through the door. She's afraid to come into contact with us because they go shopping and stuff in the Athens area. And so she doesn't want to bring germs from there over here. So she's going to throw the grand puppy into us, and I won't really get to see her, but so that's going on. One of my most exciting things this week is that I'm reading your book.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, I am 100 pages in, because I'm trying to, I only have time to set aside to read at night.
Yeah.
And so it takes little bits at a time, but I'm at the point where today all I'm thinking about is wanting to pick that book back up again. It is
Good.
very good. It's in my head. I want to know what's going to happen next. I didn't want to stop reading last night. I was still reading at midnight.
Oh, wow, that's good.
Yeah, so it's excellent. Great job. I'm very
Thank
excited
you.
about it.
I forgot you were reading it.
Yeah. I am starting to go stir crazy. Definitely an extrovert, and it's starting to take its toll on me
Yeah.
to be stuck here at home.
Yeah, I'm not an extrovert, but I'm a very like busy, active person, and my job does like require me to talk to tons of people per day, and now I don't talk to anybody. And while that's not necessarily like a bad thing since I'm an introvert, like it's actually kind of nice and relaxing, but like I'm used to doing things like constantly. And
Yeah,
so now it's like I'm at home, which like, for the past 5 years, I guess that I've been working now, like I've trained myself that work is work and
yeah.
home is home.
And now they're together. Yeah,
Yeah, and because like I can stay at the office for like 12 hours and be productive for most of those 12 hours, and then I come home and I'm like, it's time to relax, whatever. But if I'm at home and trying to do all that work, I'm not as productive here. I just can't.
yeah,
I can't switch my brain, I guess.
yeah, yeah. I'm kind of sad this week. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's hard. I really am enjoying the Twitter community. I feel like I get some interaction with people and all of that through Twitter, so that's been fun. But
yeah.
I have a joke.
Oh, right. Yes, hit me with it.
All right. I think I may have already said this one. I think I did, but I couldn't find any other ones. So people, I need jokes. Send me jokes. I'm pretty sure I said this one of the first times. The past, present, and future walk into a bar. It was tense.
I don't remember if you did. I've heard that one before. It's like a common one, but I don't remember if you've said it. But also, no.
Yeah, clearly I need help. People send me jokes and I'll read them and give you all credit for them online. Um,
Uh,
so today, as I said, we're going to be talking about backstory of your characters, and there's so many things that go into backstory, and we're probably going to do several episodes on different things. But today we chose two childhood traumas to discuss and how it might develop your character. Taylor is going to be doing, I don't remember
uh,
what you're doing.
growing up in the foster system.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And then I am doing abuse, which physical abuse, physical and mental, not sexual. That's a whole different ball game. Being in the DA's office when I was there, that's a totally different thing than what I'm talking about here today.
Yeah.
So basically, what is emotional trauma? It is damage done to the mind that occurs as a result of a distressing event. Trauma is often the result of an overwhelming amount of stress that exceeds one's ability to cope. A negative experience that causes pain on a deep psychological level. And why is it important for us to, as writers, to go into this kind of depth with our character's background? It helps with the backstory. It helps explain sorry the actions that are taken by our character, and it helps you know what reactions your character might have,
Right.
and it explains your character's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And all characters have a background. We've all had something that was emotional in the past, but not to the point necessarily where it was trauma.
Right. Yeah.
But think about how emotional trauma would affect your protagonist and your antagonist. I have only had a few sips, I promise.
I was about to ask if you had a cup beforehand.
No. But the way we're talking about this, it's just for backstory. There are whole entire stories that are stories about the abuse or about a trauma, and how that trauma is affecting the character in that story right now.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
not what you and I are talking about necessarily today. We're talking about this is something that happened in the past that helped shape how our character is today.
Right.
Um, I do want to say, try not to be trite with it. Try not to be stereotypical with it. Trauma, people handle trauma in different ways. Some people handle it better than others. So don't make light of your character's history if you're going to have some kind of traumatic event having shaped them. Don't be stereotypical. Think about it on a deeper level than just being trite and trying to bring in this little, oh, my character's going to be abused and therefore that's why they're this heinous criminal.
Right.
That
Yeah.
that doesn't always happen that way, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I can go first.
Okay, perfect.
All right. So I chose to do the foster care system slash like losing parents because the main character in the novel that you're actually reading right now partially grew up in the foster system. So the way that, and you kind of came up with the outline here of like how we wanted to go about this. So the first thing that we came up with was, the needs that are created by this psychological trauma. So, what needs does a character feel due to having the background of being in the foster care system? And that would be things like physiological needs, feeling safe and secure, feeling love and wanting to belong, having esteem and recognition, and also being able to self-actualize. So basically able to self-realize who they are, where they want to belong, have a home, that kind of thing. So what might a character that grew up in the foster care system believe about themselves or the world, even if it's not true?
Okay.
So that's the kind of like next section. Hey, buddy.
Yeah,
Kitty.
my dog is barking. Hold on a minute. Let me. Okay. My chihuahua was whining at the door. Come here.
Is that Pixie?
Yeah, you want to say hi? Come on. You want to say hi?
Is she not gonna jump up?
No.
Oh, there she
That's
is.
my baby. That's my
It's a good
chihuahua.
pup.
This is Pixie.
What a good pup.
All right, get in your bed. That's a good girl. Get in your bed. Lay down. All right, sorry about that. She was just whining. I don't know if it was picking up on the microphone or not.
Yeah, not that I noticed, but whatever. Yeah, so what might a character that grew up in the foster care system believe about themselves or the world, whether it's true or not? So they might think that, they're defective or unworthy of love and unworthy of attention. I guess probably because, they've been given up by their birth parents, or they've lost their birth parents, or they're bounced around from home to home, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was going to say it depends exactly on why they're in foster care. It might be that they have had a loving family and they died, which is a totally different thing than having been abandoned or having been abused or neglected and having the child taken away from the parents.
Right.
And that I can see for sure having ramifications.
Yeah, absolutely. They might also feel that the world is out to get them, that it's cruel and unyielding, which again, like if you've lost your parents, you're probably going to feel that way. Like, why did this happen to me? Why did it have to happen now? Why did it have to happen at all? And that kind of thing. They might believe that people only care about someone if they're whole and undamaged. And I thought this one was interesting and pretty important to bring up, especially in terms of characterization, because it's, in some foster situations, the reason that those kids end up there is because they have a mental disability or a physical disability. And I want to just say, be careful about how you use disabilities in your writing. Make sure it's not there just to be like, oh, this character's broken, so I'm going to give them this handicap, whatever. I don't think that's exactly the way to go about it. But in terms of the
having been in the DA's office, we had a child team that took care of the child cases where there was abuse or it was horrible things. And the attorneys, we cycled in and out of that because you can't take it for very long. But there were horrific traumatic events that and a lot of the cases that we would see is where the child is born dependent on drugs because the parent was a drug addict.
Right. Yeah.
And that does lead to disabilities and mental impairments and that kind of thing. And those kids get stuck into the system because often the parents aren't capable of watching the children, and
Right.
they take special care. And if they don't get put in the right foster home, they're screwed.
Right. Yeah. No,
Anyway,
exactly.
yeah, go
No,
ahead.
that's very true. Um, yeah, so they also might feel like they don't know who they are or what their purpose is.
Hmm.
Just in general, they're like, where did I come from? What does it mean? Like, what does it mean for me about who I am now that I'm in this system, since I don't have parents, since my parents abandoned me, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, and they also might think that they will never have a home or have a place to belong.
Hmm.
Um, they might think that people are inherently cruel depending on how they ended up in the foster care system or due to their experiences there. And they might believe that those with power will always take advantage over those who are weak, which I thought was an interesting one because I never really associated power with the foster care system,
Hmm.
or ending up in it or losing parents or that kind of thing. But I guess I could kind of see that because it does have a lot to do with the government and social workers and people who take kids from homes or, place these kids in certain places and that kind of thing. So what are some fears that this type of character with this type of background might have? They might fear abandonment and rejection. And this is more in terms of now that I'm writing this character and she has this background, what can I expect her fears to be as an adult, as I'm writing her kind of thing.
Hmm.
So fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, or fear that they might fall in love with someone or love someone only to lose them later.
Yeah.
Another one is betrayal. They might feel betrayed, especially if it's an abandonment situation.
I think even if their parents died, they might feel betrayed. They might feel like my parents left me. How could they have done that to me?
Absolutely, which a good example of that kind of thing is in Charmed, and I actually bring this up a little bit later. In Charmed, Paige Matthews, one of the sisters, was adopted, and her parents died, and she loved them to death. Her
Hmm.
adoptive parents, and they died, and she was angry with them for dying. So that's a good example of that,
Yeah,
actually.
definitely.
They might fear that life will never get better, that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, kind of thing. They might fear attachment to places or people because they might think that they're gonna not be permanent.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and then they could also fear people with authority or people in positions of power, which brings back in, they might believe those with power always take advantage of those who are weak. And so that might create that fear in your character.
I think that would
Um,
have been a good one for me to have put in my part of it, and I didn't really put it that way. That's a good point.
huh. Well, I'm interested to hear what you've
Hmm.
done.
Hmm.
So next I have, what behaviors can stem from this type of background. And the book that we pulled these from had a ton of behaviors to go over. And we should probably shout out that book. It's actually
Yes, definitely. People should go buy this book.
so it's actually this book. Is that backwards?
Nope, it's frontwards.
Wow, wonderful. The Emotional Wound Thesaurus, and it's by Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi, which we've talked about them before. We love their books, their thesauruses, and that kind of thing. So this is where we got most of that information, and they had a huge list of these behaviors. So I just picked a few. So they might be quick to anger or be very volatile with their emotions. They might go looking for a fight. They're going to be very confrontational. They could struggle with effective communication, and they might actually choose to keep secrets or lie, depending on the reason or what the information is or what it is that they need to communicate about. They might just tell people things that they want to hear. Whether it's true or not, they might have a habit of lying. And I think that's mostly to appease people or just, make sure that the situation stays calm or, you don't want to anger someone necessarily in that kind of situation. They could end up being highly private and distanced from others. They can also be very protective of the relationships they do make and their possessions, which I think makes a lot of sense. I've never thought about this super deeply. I've looked into it a little bit because of my book that I've written. But this is one that I think I wrote into my character without realizing that I was doing it.
Hmm.
And as I was reading this and doing research for this, I was like, like she actually fits a lot of these things, which I thought was pretty cool.
Hmm.
They can also be highly empathetic, which I liked to read about. They want to help people and they will go to super distances to help people. They might stay in a kind of fight or flight mode, and they might be surprised when people actually follow through on their word. So they'll be surprised if people are trustworthy, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what kind of personality traits might your character have with this type of background? So they might be adaptable and alert, analytical, perceptive, private, proactive, ambitious, and protective. And I know my character definitely has some of those.
Mm-hmm.
Some flaws that might stem from this are, your character might be abrasive or addictive, antisocial or distant, confrontational, cruel, cynical, dishonest, violent, or withdrawn. So I think that depends on how much your character was affected by being in the foster care system.
Yes, because we should say there are wonderful foster homes out there that are loving, and people grow up just like they're in a normal family. It is a normal family. Yeah. We're talking about trauma though, so we're not saying that every foster home is a bad experience.
Yeah, no, I have a little bit of like a little note about that at the end about how foster care is kind of portrayed in pop culture these days right now. So I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
But what might dig at this kind of psychological trauma? What might trigger a response to this trauma? So someone, failing to follow through on their word, not showing up somewhere that they're supposed to be. So you're supposed to meet someone somewhere and they don't show up. That might trigger, a fear response or one of those behaviors that I was talking about. Seeing kids ignored by their parents or parents neglecting to pay attention to their kids might also do it because they've obviously experienced that in some form or another. Sensory information that reminds your character of negative foster experiences, which I think is an important one because, think about smells that take you back to a certain memory.
Yeah.
Or, you eat a certain food and you're like, oh my God, I haven't had this since I was a kid. And I think for foster kids, that can be either a really good thing, like you said, they're a good foster homes, or it could be a bad thing if they had negative experiences. Also, places where families gather. And I think that's just because, obviously foster kids' families are not working out for some reason or another. And so they get placed in these homes and that's not, their biological family. And so that can be a kind of trigger for those characters. So how might your character overcome these fears and behaviors caused by this background? So helping other kids in the foster system by trying to get them to open up. If you meet a kid who was just like you when you were younger, then I think that can help you kind of self-realize, what you've been through in the foster care system, what your character has been through in the foster care system, that kind of thing. Helping needy children in general, just like having a soft spot for kids. Your character will probably have several soft spots for kids just because they relate to them. Especially if they're, like I said, they grew up in a similar situation or are going through something similar that your character went through. That is something that will help your character face what they went through.
Yeah.
They might want to become a foster parent themselves. And advocate for children in that way. And then realizing through some situation that people need each other and that, and that's a good thing, that you can rely on other people, and that it's necessary to rely on other people sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think the example in the book was, you get into, your character gets into an accident with the parent of a child, and then you see that, what's it called? Oh, you see that reunion, and you see how much the child needs that parent. That can also help your character realize, parents are, do want to help their kids, and, there are good people out there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So this is kind of where I bring in the, the misconception about foster care and pop culture. A lot of the foster system is brought up as antagonistic in stories. I don't think that that's, I feel like that's too widespread. I think for the most part, that can be very negative on the actual foster care system. That's not to say that it doesn't have its issues, because it certainly does. There are a lot of issues with it. There are people who take advantage of it. There are people who are not good in it. But there are also, like you said, really good foster care homes out there. And I think showing both sides of it in your story would probably be ideal.
Yeah.
So then I have some examples of where characters have been in the foster care system in pop culture.
Okay.
So I mentioned Paige Matthews from Charmed.
Yes.
She was in the foster care system. Harry Potter. So he wasn't necessarily a foster kid because he went to his aunt and uncles or whatever, but he was misplaced from his family. He lost his parents, and he was raised in a tricky situation. Michael Orr from the Blind Side movie was a foster care system kid. Claire Bennett from Heroes. Bones in the show Bones. Loki and Thor. And Dexter Morgan in Dexter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so all of those characters were foster care, characters. And, Dexter Morgan obviously ended up in a good foster care, good foster care home. He's a serial killer, but, his foster dad helped him figure out, a code.
How to kill in a good way?
Quote unquote. Let's just be ambiguous. Quote unquote.
I mean, at least his foster care dad loved him.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Although I don't know that it could have been worse. He still went on and killed, although he killed bad people.
He didn't kill innocent people.
Yeah.
That could have been worse, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, he's an example. Just he's out there. He's a different kind of guy.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what I have on the foster care system, and I think it's an important topic, especially if you use it in your writing. And my main character hit the foster system. Well, she lost her birth parents when she was a baby, so she was put in the foster care system as a baby, and then found really good adoptive parents, and they died when she was 14. So she goes back into the system at 14. But her adoptive parents loved her and were very good, and she had a good experience with that. And then she didn't have only bad experiences in the foster care system when she hit it at 14, but she was also an angsty teenager and lost her parents and was dealing with the grief from that. So I just think it was a perfect topic for me to cover based on my writing.
That's definitely. My topic is there's a lot of similarities in what a person who has lost things and ended up in foster care and a person who has been abused, because unfortunately sometimes there is abuse in foster care as well. The needs created by the abuse would be the need for safety. I mean, first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely.
The need for love, the need for belonging, recognition, especially depending on why they were abused. I mean, What did the parent or whoever was abusing them say as they were beating the crap out of them? Why can't you ever do anything right? That kind of thing. If that was what it was, then they're not going to think that they're worth anything.
Yeah.
Their esteem is going to be low. And I think being abused as a child is going to give you a skewed vision as an adult. They might be quiet to keep attention from themselves. Being afraid of having any attention on them might bring the fear of more abuse.
Right.
Seeing hiding as a way to stay safe. The expectation that everyone is abusive. Running away is an answer.
Right. Yeah.
Aggression is the answer. They might take it the entire other way around and say, you know what? I got the crap beat out of me as a kid, and I'm gonna be first. No one's gonna beat me anymore.
Yeah.
And so they might be very violent themselves. Violence is the way to handle anger, because that's what they were taught. When my mom got mad at me, she beat me up, or my dad. When feelings of being worthless, feelings that they aren't worthy of being loved, because as their parent, most of these are, in my head, parents abusing their child.
Right.
So as they're beating you, they always have a reason. You didn't do well in school, you got in trouble, you didn't buy the right soap, who knows what sets the parent off to beat their kid, but whatever it is, that kid's going to soak up and say, oh, I did this wrong. So they're going to feel like they're not worthy of being loved. If my mom loved me, if I was doing right, she wouldn't have hit me. and that love is pain. So they might think that's the way you show love. You're supposed to beat the crap out of the people that you love. I mean, it could screw them up.
Right.
The fears caused by this trauma: rejection, the fear of being loved, because when you are loved, they beat the crap out of you.
Right.
The fear of never being loved. My parents didn't love me. How will I ever find someone who will love me? The fear of being a victim, which might then make them act out as an aggressor as opposed to being a victim.
Right.
The fear of happiness, the fear of getting it, the fear of losing it, which is similar to what yours is. Fear of pain, fear of people in general, fear of people in power. That was another one of yours.
Yep.
What might develop in your character because of this trauma? They could be depressed. They could be full of anxiety. I mean, everything is a potential, someone's going to hurt me.
I would be surprised if there wasn't any kind of, disorder like that, like depression or anxiety. Like I would be extremely surprised if, well, I guess I'd be surprised if you hadn't had therapy or, that kind of thing. So yeah, no,
yeah.
definitely.
Fear of different and new situations because you don't know if this is going to be the next chance of being abused.
Right.
PTSD, which I think your thing would also lead to your situation, that your trauma that you talked about would also lead to PTSD.
Absolutely, and it was actually one of the developments that was listed in it, and I just didn't include it because I included somewhere later, the fight or flight response, which is a more PTSD type of behavior. So yeah, definitely.
And it could lead to deep psychological problems. It could lead to OCD, the need to have complete control, because if you can control everything, then you won't get hit.
Right.
If you can make everything perfect and in its place, then whoever it is that's in power over you isn't going to be upset enough to come and hurt you.
Yeah.
And so I can see OCD being a huge development that might come from this trauma. Schizophrenia or the dissociative individual disorder, that's not right. Anyway, I can't remember what it is. The DID, multiple personalities. In extreme cases, then they try to protect themselves, and these other characters, these other personalities come out to protect them.
Right.
Self-abusive behavior because they don't think that they are worthy of love. They've been beaten up all their life, and so obviously they're bad people. So they drink, they smoke, they do drugs, they have unprotected sex, or just a lot of sex, which isn't always necessarily a bad thing, but they're doing it to abuse themselves as opposed to doing it because it's something that they enjoy or love or whatever. It's to hurt themselves.
Right.
Or they could be the opposite end where they're controlling, not just OCD, but that they're the controlling one in whatever relationship or interactions that they have, trying to control everything, which inevitably you can't, which would then subsequently lead to explosive blow-ups, that kind of behavior, volatile, explosive behavior. Or on the opposite end, becoming a protector of those who have been abused. That's, I think, the key is how your character has reacted from this trauma. Have they used it towards good, so to speak, where they are using it to protect others and can see that, or are they on the other end where everything's out to get them and they're going to strike first, which I think could be the antagonist protagonist dichotomy, but not always. I think a protagonist can be just as have just as many negative traits as, and the bad guy, so to speak, can have good traits. That antagonist who has been damaged and has issues might still be a protector of children.
Yeah.
Even while he's out murdering hookers or whatever it is that he's doing, he might be a protector of children because of this trauma. And that makes an interesting character twist when you're writing a book.
Right.
They probably or could make poor relationship choices. Because they've never been taught what a good relationship is.
Right. Yeah.
Personality traits that your character might have. And I've found that a lot of these are either or. It depends on how your character has learned from this trauma. Which way did they go? They could be quiet, inhibited. They could be cruel, violent.
Right.
They could be manipulative. They could be cautious. They could be self-determined, independent, heroic. There's just so many ways that these traumas can affect your character. They could be nurturing. They're probably going to be extremely observant because they're going to be watching people for that trigger that might, is he going to come hit me now?
Right.
They would learn to read people very well. So that might be a character, you know, maybe you've got a detective who was abused as a kid and they're very good at reading people because of what happened to them as a kid.
That reminds me of Louie in my Louie and Delaney. Like, she's very watchful of how Oris reacts to things, and how he might respond to that. And she knows kind of the words that she shouldn't say and the topics that she should avoid just because she has watched Oris and knows exactly, you know, what could set him off to hurt her. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. They could be a good study of character. They could be courageous. Or they might be that bystander that allows someone to get beaten up because they, you know, that's what's supposed to happen. I got beaten up. You should get beaten up too. If you're bad, that's what happens. You know,
Right.
So that this trauma can lead in so many different directions. So you can do so many things with it when you're developing your character as to where you want your character to be. And you've got this reason as to why, this logical line that might be usable for you as you write your character.
Right.
The triggers: being yelled at, someone being aggressive, witnessing violence or abuse, being told the same thing that your parents or abuser, whoever it is, told you. You know, you aren't good enough. So if your boss comes in and says, you know, you've done a crap job, you're never good enough, that might be a trigger.
Right.
You never do what you're supposed to do. They would probably be able to study body language and see the body language of their abuser. If they see that somewhere, that might be a trigger. And then the trigger, as a writer, we can do whatever we want to. We can have them go off the deep end. That could be the inciting incident that changes your character's story from this point forward, this trigger. I mean, it could come down to this.
Right.
How they might overcome their background. They could have a kid of their own. And that could go either way also. They could pass on that, you know, that cycle of abuse, or they could be the most patient, wonderful, understanding parent because they've gone through it themselves and they know what not to do. Could go either way.
Right.
Helping other abuse victims, getting therapy, accomplishing something and making themselves proud. That's that self-actuation, I think is what you call it.
Actualization, yeah.
Actualization. That same type of thing. And then I was looking for examples in fiction, and 50 Shades of Grey. I don't think you ever read that one.
No.
Yeah, it's not it's I've read it and watched the movies. It is what it is. It's pop culture, so I wanted to read it.
I think I read a random page in the middle of one of the random books, and I knew from reading that one page that I did not enjoy the style of writing.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't I don't care about the content, whatever, but the style of writing was not what I would be interested in reading, I guess. So I've never read a whole book of it.
Yeah, that's not my favorite erotica novel.
Yeah.
Kresley Cole does an amazing job. She has an erotic series, and in fact, I think that's on my list because it's not on my list. Oh yeah, it is. The Game Maker series is what her erotic books are, and all three of the men in the three different books came from their brothers, so they came from the same background where they were abused.
Yeah.
And each of them had different traumas that led them to where they are. And if you want to look at using abuse as character background, go and read Kresley Cole's Game Maker series. Not only is she a fantastic writer who I would love to be able to emulate, but she used that background and developing her character in a believable way. Excellent series of books, and I know you haven't read those either because that's not your favorite genre.
Nah.
Sybil, that's the famous one, by Flora Retta Schreiber. It was made into a movie back in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I've definitely heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the epitome of abusive trauma on a child that has consequences, multiple split personalities. The movie Split,
Oh
which
yeah,
is more recent.
right.
He was abused as a child by his mom. His dad left him on the train and never came back, and the mom kind of blamed him and abused him, and that's where his multiple personality disorder came from.
Yeah.
Harry Potter also,
Yep.
he was definitely emotionally abused.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever saw him getting beaten
No.
by the Dursleys, but the emotional abuse was horrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Peeta in Hunger Games, he is actually an example of how he turned that trauma into something good.
Right.
He's more protagonistic than he is antagonistic, and he was
Yeah,
beaten.
absolutely.
Hannibal Lecter, which I didn't know this. I haven't read the books. I saw movies, but Nazis, when he was a little boy, he and his sister, Nazis came in and killed the parents, took them, and they were staying, the Nazis were staying in the cabin. They ran out of food. So the Nazis butchered his sister, cooked her, and they all ate her.
That's really disturbing.
Which is what led to, Hannibal Lecter is now a cannibal.
Right.
So he was fundamentally traumatized by being forced to eat his sister.
Well, yeah.
So, and look how he turned out. So
stellar citizen.
So there is a lot that you can do with this kind of background. Childhood traumas can be used to create some really interesting things in your characters, and I think it's something that we all should think about. Backstory is huge. It's something that we really need to think. The character development should not be just who are they now, but how did they get to be who are they now.
Right. And arguably childhood trauma with stories like these are important to tell, especially if they do end up more protagonistic than antagonistic and that kind of thing. So
yeah. In fact, I would rather see it as leading to a protagonist rather than leading. It's kind of cliche, which is horrible because there is nothing cliche about being abused. That is a real life tragedy, and none of us as writers should ever make light of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it is interesting how psychologically we all are products of what happened to us as children. So it is interesting as a writer to use these things and to think about it. Just doing this podcast is making my brain just go, oh gosh, this is great, and it's things that maybe the reader will never know, but we as the writer have to know, because it gives, and it might come out slowly. There might be hints of it in how our character acts, and at some point it may come out. It may actually absolutely come out, but
yeah, especially if it's important to the character and the character's story, I think it definitely should come out. And yeah, the behaviors that they develop due to having these types of traumas in their past and having this type of background, I think it's important to know that background, whether the reader knows it or not, just that you can write your character more effectively
and realistically.
Right.
Yeah. I was trying to search up examples of this, and so my Google search, I'm sure I'm on a watch list somewhere, was what causes, well, first of all kinds of research on abuse and that kind of thing. So yeah, somewhere I've clicked that, but I was looking for what characters were victims of abuse. And Fight Club, I thought, oh, I bet he was abused, because that's an excellent movie. And he was not. His issue came from insomnia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which I thought was interesting. I assumed, based on the story, which I don't want to say anything about in case surely people have seen it by now, but
An old movie at this point.
yeah, but it was not, his issues were not due to abuse like I expected. They were due, he was having insomnia. It was due to his lack of sleep.
Yeah,
So I thought that was interesting.
that is interesting. Yeah.
But we went long again. We're trying to make these episodes shorter. We just love to talk. We love to eat, drink, and talk.
We do. I do have an interview question if you think we can fit it in.
Okay, fit it in.
Which one of your books, which one of your book settings would you want to travel to yourself? If you could visit one of your book settings, which one would it be?
Oh, wow. Well, frickin' fairies is here, so I'm already here.
But it's still a new setting because as far as we know,
Yeah,
I guess.
I wouldn't want to meet the Fae. The Fae are
right.
bad people. I wouldn't want to meet them.
Right.
So maybe Kata's world, where it starts here in Atlanta and she goes to this other world. It has some neat things. There was a party she went to, and there were some exotic drinks that I'm like, oh, I want to try that.
I'm gonna try that.
I want that. So, and their clothing that they wore and the parties that they had in this particular realm, I was like, I could go there. So I think that one.
Nice, very nice. I would probably go to the world of the book that you're reading. My MacBook, she is set in Savannah, Georgia, which is, first of all, one of my favorite cities in the world anyway. And then second of all, magic is now out there. So it would be cool to see all the different kinds of creepy crawlies / things like her that'll kind of come out into the light now that she's kind of exposed it. So
yeah, the timing of that book would be a great place to go to.
Yeah.
No, I don't know yet what everyone else knows, but I'm learning as Michaela's learning, and what a neat place that she finds herself in. She's finding things out that are interesting and exciting, and that would be exciting.
Yeah.
Well, thanks guys for listening. Come visit our website, eatdrinkrightpodcast.com. You can contact us from there. I had a complaint on our website that we didn't have links to our podcast.
Thank you for complaining. Seriously, thank you.
So I've now put in on our menu at the top that has a place to go to links, but there are some, I don't know how to do a link on iTunes. I know there's a way to, but I don't know how to do it. Yeah. But I've got links to YouTube. I've got links to Spotify, I believe. I've got links to Stitcher. But basically, you can go to whatever your format is, wherever you go to listen to podcasts, and search Eat, Drink, Write podcast or Eat, Drink, Write and Urban Fantasy Whiteboard, and we should pop up. We're just about on every platform that there is out there. Also on our website, you can find all our social media. We're real big on Twitter. We have an Instagram. We've got a Facebook. We have a Patreon, which is where you all can come and help us. Oh, and I do need to say, I know a lot of you all are waiting for this magical query letter format. I have her notebook. I went through it from front to back, and I can't find her magic query letter, but I'm going to put together one. She gave me hints on how to do it. So I am at some point going to post a query letter formula for you all.
I can also put one together so that you don't have to, since I kind of have an idea of what I do.
Of what it is. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I really thought I had one in that notebook, but yeah.
Yeah, you've got a lot of notes that I could do something with to make a worksheet. So maybe between the two of us, but it's not there yet, guys. I'm sorry. It is coming. It will be there as fast as I can get it there. Yeah. But our Patreon, I don't know if I finished saying, patreon.com/EDW podcast. And thank you guys for your support.
Thanks, guys.